What's up, dream builder? Are you someone who's interested in creating a life by your design through all things real estate? Well, I can assure you, you are in the right place. Join me, your host, Casanova Brooks. I'm an award-winning real estate agent and investor as we uncover the top tips, strategies, and the mindset of the top real estate entrepreneurs across the world. Stay locked in because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. What's up, DreamNation? We are back again, and this time we got one of my family members. And when I say that, I really mean that. Normally, when you guys see the show or when you're listening to the show, I have someone on there that I've built a good relationship with, but not somebody that necessarily I've known for many years and that I truly call family. And so today, I'm excited to bring this episode to you because I know this man in and out, and I know that he's going to drop a lot of value. So without further ado, help me in welcoming my brother, Mr. Luper Akough, to the show. Lupe, you want to go ahead and say what's up to DreamNation?
What's up, DreamNation?
Man, this is going to be a really fun episode. And the reason being is because a lot of people have been reaching out and they've been asking about the real estate segment of it. And a lot of people want to get into investing, but they want to make sure that they can protect their investments. So I know that that's where you're going to give us a lot of knowledge and insight. But to give people a background on who you are, I always like to think of us as entrepreneurs, just like superheroes. And the reason being is because we're constantly putting on a cape. And we're flying around the world and we're trying to solve problems, whether that be ours or our community problems. And so before you became the mogul that you are with multiple businesses, the top insurance agent all across the country for your Farm Bureau brand, if we could take it back to when you were just a young boy, tell me, who is Luper Akough?
Luper Akough is a son of an immigrant. That's what I tell people all the time. I think that really instilled the drive in me. I saw my dad not only triumph, but struggle in the early parts of his life to establish a foothold in the U.S. So I feel like it's my obligation to not only surpass the success, but to show other people that it's possible for themselves as well.
Got it. So in your world, did you grow up around, I guess, insurance? Did you grow up around real estate? Did you grow up around entrepreneurship? Or was that something that you just decided to take on as you got older?
You know what? Yes, I would say that I grew up around entrepreneurship. My father, because he wasn't able to make it into corporate America, he started a business when I was 13 years old. And wanting to be like my dad, I always told myself that I wanted to be a business owner. I also had an uncle that had a pretty successful landscaping and sprinkler company as well. So I was around a lot of entrepreneurs. My father did okay. He didn't do great, but he definitely he instilled that spirit of entrepreneurship in me at a very young age.
Got it. I love it. Now, for someone who is listening at this right now and they have interest in insurance, tell me, where did insurance come in for you? Because especially in the Black communities, but I think in a lot of poverty-stricken communities, insurance is one of the last things that people ever really think about until they've essentially made it. But it should be one of the first things when you talk about protecting your life and your property, things like that. So where did that come in your trajectory? And why do you feel like that insurance should be one of the first things that people look at?
I do definitely agree with you. It should be something that people think about more, mainly because of the stability of the career. But for me, it never was a goal of mine to really be an insurance agent. It happened by chance. I graduated high school and went off to college, was doing my gen eds, and I was writing a paper for one of my classes. And I remember asking a guy that was right next to my dad's business. He was an insurance agent with State Farm. And I asked him, why do you do what you do? And I've told the story numerous times because people ask me all the time, why are you an insurance agent? But this guy told me, you know what? The same thing. I never thought I'd be in insurance. When I first graduated high school, I was a manager at a lens crafter's lens store. I think most people have at least heard the brand. And I worked my way up until I couldn't go any farther without a degree. And so I decided to go back to school and get my college degree. So he went back and got his college degree, became a nurse because he thought that there's some stability in that profession. Became a nurse, but realized he was more knowledgeable than the doctors he was working adjacent to. He didn't like that. And
Right.
a lot of people say that all the time about how they get so educated and that sometimes there's people that are making more money than you, but they don't have the knowledge that you have. So he said, you know what, I'm going to take my talents and I'm going to use them in a different business. So he decided to become a pharmaceutical rep. He said, I made as much money as that I ever thought I would make, but I never spent any time with my family that I had now. So I wanted to do something that not only allowed me to spend time with my family, but also allowed me to make a decent amount of money. And he said, you know what, my dad was an insurance agent. It really made me think about it. So I became an insurance agent. Now I have that stability, and I also have the income that makes sense for me and my family, where not only can I take care of them, I can spend time with them, and we can travel. Everybody loves to travel. And in hearing him say all that, I think being a young millennial, time is everything. Time is all we think about. We want to keep as much of it for ourselves as possible. So within 6 months, I got my insurance license. It was easy.
Got it. And so now, again, you're one of the top insurance agents around the country. Talk to me though, for anybody who's thinking about getting into insurance, or they want to try a different path, they want to try a different career, and they know that they want that freedom and the time with their family. Talk to me about what was your biggest struggle along your journey that now you've been doing it for 10 years?
11.
11 years.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what was your biggest
one.
struggle. What'd you say?
You better give me my one.
I got you, right? We crossed that milestone plus
Right.
one. So what was the biggest struggle for you throughout these last 11 years?
I think initially the biggest struggle was being young. I was 19 years old when I started in insurance. To get people to take me serious, even get my family to take me serious. I was growing up, I was a pretty popular guy, but I was known as being a guy that wasn't too serious, going with the flow of things. Did what I want, but was never really serious about anything specifically. So when I got into the insurance business, I think it was the first business the first thing that I took really, really serious. And it took about 2 to 3 years for everybody around me to say, okay, it's Lupe Akough that does insurance, not Lupe Akough. He's got this little insurance job. Yeah, I would say early on, I think that was the biggest thing. Then the next step after that was probably realizing I can run my own agency. So it took me a couple years to realize that myself. And then once I opened up my own agency, it took a while for people around me to realize, okay, Lupe's running his own show. So there's levels to everything. There's always a challenge with everybody at every step that they get to. What's the next step? How do I improve? How do I become better? How do I want people to perceive me throughout this process?
Yeah, I love it. And I love you brought up two big points there, and something that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially in the world of finance. And when you're talking about insurance, when you're talking about real estate, or when you're talking about just being a financial advisor, if you're somebody that's new to the game, or especially if you're somebody that's young, it's very hard to get people to take you seriously, to get people to share their most valuable what they look at valuable information with you. So for somebody that's new, if they come under you as a mentee, how do you recommend that they get people to take them seriously? How can they make sure that they can scale their business even quicker than maybe somebody like you did because you didn't have all the answers in the beginning?
One thing that always sticks in my mind about what I'm about to say, but is my mother-in-law tells me something all the time. One of the things that she always says is not everything old is bad. And she says that all the time because obviously—
What does that mean?
Because I think a lot of times millennials want to they want to reinvent the wheel on everything. And the reason why I say that is because my answer to your question is be consistent and show up. Be consistent in whatever you're doing. And as long as you're showing up and showing people that you're always going to be there, eventually they'll take you serious. It's not a new concept. This concept has existed forever. And I don't think that'll ever change.
Got it. No, I love it. And I think a lot of people, they are consistent, or at least they look at they are consistent, but still they have that limited mindset. And you said I had to start really believing in myself that I could run my own show. And then that's when other people would say, hey, Lupe's actually doing it. And so what do you think was the spark that flipped it for you? Because there's many of people who've been in insurance just as long, if not longer, but they've never taken that leap of faith to try to run their own show. They've been just content. So what was that thing for you? Was it your dad talking to you? Was it a client? What changed, or what sparked your change?
You know what? I think it was a mixture of a lot of different things. I think one, your surroundings. You should always have somebody, you should have many different advisors in your life, but when it comes to your professional career, you should always have somebody that you're mentoring. You should always have somebody that you perceive yourself as being an equal with. And then you should always have somebody that you're looking to become like as well. And the more you're talking with all those people, you'll obviously gain the confidence, but then also gain the knowledge of what you need to do to prepare yourself for the next step of your career. But then also do the research. We have this amazing thing in 2020 called Google.
Right.
And you can literally Google anything, YouTube anything, to self-educate. The more you self-educate, the more you sound like an expert. The more that you sound like an expert, the more people will believe that you're an expert. And then they'll start asking you the question, why are you working for this person? How come you don't have your own show?
Wow.
Well, how come you don't have your own agency?
I love it. Do the work first, right? And show up as an expert. You got to believe it before it ever happens, because then you'll basically project that into other people. People don't know what you don't know. They only know the level of what they know. So if you show up as an expert, people don't know that you're not an expert until you open your mouth and remove all doubt. But the way that's what my grandma used to always say to me too. So when you bring it up your stepmom, my grandma would be like, it's better to keep your mouth closed and remain a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. But if you show up and you educate yourself on Google, on podcasts, through books, through YouTube, that's the way that when you open your mouth, you don't remove all doubt and people think, that, hey, he is. And then at the end of the day, you don't have to know all of the answers, but you can figure out the answers along the way. So that's a great point. Now, I want to talk about the real estate world, which is where you and I really got connected. And that's where a lot of the audience, they want to learn more about real estate and how they can protect themselves in real estate. And that's what I've been able to talk to you about a lot. And I love the fact that you have both sides of the coin. Not only are you an insurance agent, but you flipped houses, you've owned Airbnb, you own commercial property. So you've seen every sense of the spectrum. So let's talk about for real estate, especially where the time that we're in right now, where people are doing protests every single day. And there's also riots that's coming along with those protests. If you are somebody who you own some property right now and you're afraid that your property is going to get damaged because of the riots, is there anything that you can do to protect yourself?
To protect yourself, one of the things that I would say that I would recommend that you do is mainly probably speak with your insurance agent. I think that's the most important thing. There's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to coverage in general. Business interruption or any kind of loss of use coverage is the coverage that you're looking for. These are the type of policies that would insure you in times where that are unforeseen with your business, whether it's a rental property or it's a commercial space. But a lot of times that coverage probably only covers the structure itself. It does not actually cover loss of income. So you need to ask your insurance agent, hey, I know that you'll cover the structure if there's any damage, but will you guys cover income that's going to be lost throughout this process? For how long? And what if there's extra costs that are incurred because of what's going on? Is that something you guys are going to help me out with or not? So those are things that are super, super important.
Is it very important, especially when you own multiple properties? Is it really important to be with a big name brand like a State Farm or like a Progressive? Or is it like the banking system where the smaller the bank could be, the more flexible in things that they're willing to take on? What does that look like from an insurance perspective?
You know what? I just really think that it depends on your risk. Similar to banking, I think that there's a place for every style of bank. Insurance is very similar as well. It really depends on your specific risk and what that insurance company wants to be good at and the type of coverages that you need. For instance, the company that I work for, we are not a company that insures roofing companies. It's just something that they don't want to get involved in. At one time that they were in that space, they decided probably about 5 to 10 years ago, you know what, that's not a risk that we want to take on. But we do over-the-road trucking, which you could consider to be just as risky as roofing in a lot of different ways. They say the most dangerous thing that people do on a daily basis is roofing or is driving the vehicle. So you would assume that risk would be just as risky as standing on a roof in a lot of different ways. To be more direct with your question, I think it just really depends.
Got
which I
it.
know that's not the best answer to give, but
And we understand that, but the whole purpose is to make sure that we're educated up front, because if we don't know what we don't know and we don't know the questions to ask. So just like you're saying, that loss of coverage, I think that that's a big one that a lot of people wouldn't think about. They just
right.
figure, hey, I got business insurance. And I don't even know when they're explaining so many things on the front end, you just want this policy because there's a lot of emotion that comes along. Most of the time when people go get insurance, it's after they've just bought something, a business, a car, a property. So now they got to get insurance on it and they just don't know what to ask. And on top of that, they got the emotion. So the things that are being explained to them is going in one ear and out the other, and they don't know how to be strategic.
And I think even for business owners, it's different. A lot of business owners know that they need coverage and that they should have it, but they usually just get the general liability. So in all reality, only 40% of US Americans that own businesses had the proper coverage in this last situation with all these protesting and riots going on. So
Wow.
majority of business owners did not. And there's a huge percentage of business owners that don't have insurance at all, because there's no law that really requires you in every state, in every circumstance that states that you need general liability insurance or any business insurance at all. General liability just covers the premises for any negligence that happens. This business interruption coverage is additional coverage that you have to pay for. So in most business owners' mind is, I want to keep costs low. So since I want to keep costs low, I'm going to get the bare minimum of what I need, and that's all that I want. Until something usually takes place, then at that point they start asking questions, or they become a little more sophisticated with their business, and maybe they've had a friend have an issue and they're like, you know what, I don't want to go through that. Let me call my agent and ask the right questions.
Got it. Yeah. And that's a great point. I know that's something that you've educated me on for a couple of years now. Hey, check your policy, because even in the real estate world, most of the time as an investment property, you go get the cheapest amount of coverage. But yet, if you're in something that you educated me on was, if your property burns down, do you have enough coverage to actually replace that? And most of the time people don't. Like if the property is worth 120,000 now to replace it, rebuild it, and you
Right.
only have $40,000 worth of coverage, what happens at that point?
And I think as long as you're educated on the type of policy that you have, because I'll never steal an investor away from making a decision such as, I bought a house for $10,000, I put $20,000 in it. I want to insure it for $50,000, even though replacement costs on that particular house might be 175,000. Maybe they don't want to insure it because the numbers don't make sense. As long as they understand what they have, knowledge is power, and they're able to make a decision on what it looks like moving forward. Maybe they just want to, if the house were to burn down, God forbid, they want to clear the land and take the money and buy something else and sell the property. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's saying that you can't do that. It's just making sure that you understand what you have so that you know how to move forward.
I love it, man. Talk to me about, why do you think most people do not have life insurance? Because this is something else that it's a conversation that many of people, especially in the Black community, should be talking about all the time. And talk to me and educate some people on how valuable life insurance is, why someone should have life insurance if they do not right now, even if they're struggling to pay their bills, why life insurance is so important.
Let me give you the number one answer.
Yeah.
That's probably not the most PC answer.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
they're not. I'm sorry. They're selfish.
Huh.
They're selfish. That's the number one reason. They're thinking about now, and they're not thinking about later. But I will also add to that knowledge. They don't have the knowledge of needing these things or needing a life insurance policy. They don't get it. They don't understand how it works.
Educate us, because I need to know how it works. I do have life insurance, but maybe I
Right.
need more. So educate me.
It's a legacy builder. If you think about it, you buy a policy at a very young age, if possible. You pay $20 a month for the rest of your life. Let's say that you live to be 70 years old, and anybody in your family that you get to name, they can get a policy for they can get premium of $250,000 tax free. What do you think the next generation in your family could do with that? They can
Right.
pay off the house they live in. They can put kids in school. So then you're starting the next generation off at a higher floor, so to speak. So then they can then provide more for their family. So it's, like I said, it's legacy building. Some of
Wow.
the most wealthy families in the world, even though that they have money, they still purchase life insurance policies because it allows them to pay it forward and to put their family down the line in better situations.
And there's different types of policies, right? Are all policies created equal, or
Absolutely.
what does that look like?
There's two main types. There's a term policy and there's a permanent policy. Both types have many different types of products, but in bottom line, the term policy is only good for a certain period of time. So it's like renting an apartment. You're good for that period, that term. And then after that term is up, the rate will go up by your age and your medical record at that period of time. Then you have a permanent policy, which is like owning a piece of real estate. You buy it. Your rate essentially doesn't stay it doesn't essentially doesn't change over the life of that policy, and the death benefit is then guaranteed. Not only that, you build what they call cash value in the policy, which is like equity in your home. So on a monthly basis, as you're making your payment, you're building equity into that policy, which you can then put on your financial statement, and you can actually leverage that life insurance policy by going to the bank and say, hey, I have $25,000 in cash value in that policy. You can either borrow against it or use it as collateral to get a loan at the bank.
They treat it the same as like a HELOC where like you can get 100%, or is it like, since it's life insurance, like how does that all work out?
And I think that's depends on the bank. And it really depends on the style of policy as well, because not all policies are created equal. And that's even with permanent policies as well. But there's probably a certain threshold. I've never actually done it myself, so I wouldn't know how that process looks from experience. But I would assume that their guidelines would probably be similar with real property, such as your personal house.
Got it. Talk to me about a time that you really started to advocate for insurance, because what I want people to do is not only get this information, but I want them to know how serious that this is. So talk to me about a time that you've seen that if someone had life insurance, that they would have been so much better off, but because they did not, it was only something that you could have shook your head at, where they would have. Is there any scenario that you could think of that if they would have had insurance, they would have came away pretty well off, but because they did not, it was a very, very sad time?
How much time do you got?
We only want one. I want to paint the picture, because a lot of people don't hear it. It'll go over their head and they'll be like, oh yeah, it's good information. But when we paint that story to people to understand what they're doing by not having this type of insurance, then that's what I really want them to get out of this.
I'll try to find one that'll relate to the most people. You have a middle-aged family that are in their early 40s. They have 3 kids. They live in a nice suburban neighborhood. They have their own house that they have a mortgage on. They just bought it a couple years ago. They have 2, I wouldn't say brand new cars, but a couple years old. They have loans on them, and they both have student debt. The husband is a breadwinner. He makes decent money. He's an attorney. She's a nurse. The attorney, the husband passes away. No life insurance. How does the family dynamics change? First and foremost, they still have the car payments, they still have the mortgage, and they still have at least her student debt to pay for. They lost the major income. So now they have to sell that house. They have to sell both cars and then use the equity in those cars to buy a car that's either cheaper in monthly payments or pay cash for that car. Now the kids get uprooted from that home and they have to move into a different district or a different place in general so that they can afford their payment on a monthly basis because they lost the majority of their income. Now that family specifically, those kids, one or two things are going to happen. They're going to get educated on life insurance because somebody's going to mention it to them and let them know that if they had life insurance, they would have been able to keep everything relatively the same because they could have paid off the cars, they could have paid off the house, and they could have even paid off student debt. So now they're only looking at taxes on the cars and the house, and then also just their everyday living expenses, and maybe be in a situation where mom does not have to work full time. She can still work part time at her nursing job 3 days a week and still be part of her kids' lives.
Wow. That's a scenario that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to because just like you said, a lot of people, it starts off about the kids. And that's
Right.
what happens when you're being selfish. If you don't have this life insurance, that's what's going to happen. The kids, everything's going to change for them. And they
Right.
might not know exactly how to adapt to it. As a grown person, if you have this job, you have these things, you're already traveling, you're like, but as kids, they're still trying to find their place in this world, as we all are, but definitely more so as a kid. And so taking them out of that norm of what they already have can be the most devastating part of it all, on top of losing whoever that parent was.
And the other scenario I was going to mention where, let's say, one of the kids does not realize how important life insurance is, that kid is then set back probably, let's just say, a generation, because now instead of being able to thrive in their life, they're surviving until they get to a point where they realize, okay, these are the things that need to be done so that I prepare for the future. We can set our kids up, we can set our kids up to be, if we're doing those right things, such as paying $20 a month for a life insurance policy. Our kids can be affected in a positive manner.
I love it, man. You
Yeah.
got so much wisdom and you continue to educate every single day through social media, through everybody who comes in contact with you. Where do you feel like you get most of your inspiration and wisdom from? Is it a book that you can maybe say that, hey, this helped to change my mindset and put me on the right path? Is it a YouTube channel? Is it a mentor? What's it been for you?
You know what? I think I take my inspiration from other people, other people's stories. I don't think there's one. I think that there's greatness around all of us every single day, and I think it's listening to people and talking to people and helping people, but then also looking back and realizing how far you've come, but how far your family's come. That's where my inspiration comes from. But as far as knowledge is concerned, I'm one that reads everything, good or bad. I'm an information junkie. And I think not only that, my dad taught me to do something when I was very, very young. When you read something, you should think about a couple different things. Comprehension, what is it saying? Then you're looking at who's writing it, what perspective are they coming from? And then last perspective, if you were writing, how would you tell that story different?
Mm.
And I think by doing those three things, it allows you're exercising your brain and your thoughts, and you're able to think about the world and what it looks like around us. And then also then easily give your perspective. It's a muscle. The brain is a muscle. The more
It
you use,
absolutely is.
yeah,
I love it. What
yeah.
Talk to me about, what does having a dream and executing on that dream mean to you?
I think it's first and foremost, I think it's important. But to be completely honest, I don't have dreams. I have plans. Because a
Mm.
dream is something you think about. A plan is something that you execute by breaking it up in small steps. So I think dreams are very, very important. It's something that you talk about with your friends and family. And one day I'm going to own a G-Wagon. That's my next goal.
Yeah.
But I also have a plan on how I'm gonna get that G-Wagon. And it's got to be done out of a plan of comfortability. I don't want to get to a point where I feel like I gotta sell all my things so I can look flashy in this new car. I want to be able to go to the dealership and write the check, and it'd be no different than writing checks for my tax in a way that I know that it's an obligation. I just got to do it because it's something that I want.
Do you think that anybody can create a life by their design?
Absolutely, absolutely.
The reason why I asked that question is because for a lot of people, they're scared right now. They have a lot of uncertainty and they feel like that, whether it's their skin color, whether it's their lack of resources, they feel like that they don't have the advantages, and they feel like they don't have the stamina, I would say, to be able to create that life by their design. How would you advise someone, because you've been able to do it, you've been able to create multiple businesses now, right, including working and partnering with Amazon, to now having almost 100 employees?
Mhm.
How can someone go out and blaze their path in the next 3 years? How can they start to get on that path to create a life by their design?
I think first and foremost, it starts with that dream. Then it starts with a plan that you break it up in bite-sized pieces, what you need to do on a daily basis. But then also it takes training of your mind and your habits, routine in your day, routine in your thoughts. because I would agree with you is that we all have adversity. We all have things roadblocks that can stand in our way. But even in those roadblocks, there's always a way around them. That doesn't mean that some people have better opportunity to succeed than others. It definitely exists, but there's always a way.
Got it. I love it. I love it, man. There's somebody out there right now that is inspired by your story. They're going to stay connected with you and they want to blaze a path like you've done. You do everything from insurance, pure entrepreneurship, you do real estate, and you do it all at a high level. For somebody else, though, that's listening to this, they have that little voice in their head. And that little voice in their head says that they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, or maybe they just don't have enough resources. What's the one thing that you would tell that person to get them to just take action?
Tell themselves that they can. I think it starts within. But like I said before, training yourself to believe that in yourself. So if it's simple things like saying, I will own that business someday. On your phone, put a picture of what that business is going to look like, or what that house is going to look like, what that car is going to look like, what that vacation is going to look like. Because you're training yourself. The more you see it, the more you'll believe it. The more you say it, the more you'll believe it at the end of the day. We're that much in control.
I love it, man. And that's exactly, if you tell yourself a lie enough times, you'll start to believe it. And if you could tell yourself a truth enough times, in a sense, you're just speaking into existence.
Correct.
Right? Like that's all what you're doing. I'm going to start that real estate business. I'm going to own that real estate property. And if you say that enough to yourself, it doesn't start to feel unrealistic anymore. And when you tell it to other people, once you've said it enough, it becomes habitual, just like you said. And then now all of a sudden you have that consistency. So that's been super dope, man. For somebody that's looking to stay connected with you, where can they find you at?
You know what? I'm on most social media platforms, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm at the only Lupe Akough, and then also Facebook as well. So those are the ones, the main three that I'm the most active on.
Got it. Last thing that I want to ask you is there anything that you wish that we would have asked that I didn't?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. I love your show, by the way.
Thank you. We appreciate it, man. We look forward to having you on here again. We look forward to talking more about entrepreneurship, more about the mindset and how you trained yourself. But I think from the real estate and insurance perspective, you've given so much knowledge. And so I want to say thank you, my brother, for coming on the show, for blessing us with your wisdom. And remember DreamNation and the dream we trust. But just as he said, it's not just about the dream. It's about taking action with an executed game plan. Because if not, it'll only merely be a fantasy. That's all we got for this one. We'll see you on the next one. First, I want to say thank you for allowing me to walk with you on this real estate journey. If you've gotten anything out of this episode, do me a favor and head on over to iTunes if you have access and leave me a review. My whole goal is to make sure that I'm serving you all the right way. You're my tribe. You're who I care about. You're why I do this. So if you want to give me any type of thanks, or if you want to let me know whatever your thoughts or your feelings are from this episode or any other episode that you've listened to, leave me a rating or review. And also, if you're looking for more tips, strategies, and even resources when it comes to leveling up your real estate game, head on over to DreamNationAcademy.com. We have a really cool real estate section there, and it's something that I wish that I would have had when I first got started in real estate. So that's DreamNationAcademy.com. Don't wait. I'll see you on the other side.